Welcome back to the Cover to Cover Girls Book Club podcast. I am joined by Hallie Bell,
Hi, guys.
and we have got a very special guest. We've got author Kate Brody with us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. So, hopefully, you guys watched our last episode. We covered Rabbit Hole. It was one of the most anticipated books of 2024. I cannot say this enough. I was like all over the internet, it was everywhere. You need to read this book. And so I was like, Hallie Bell, we have to read this. And like we said in our other video, Kate, you were just so nice and responsive and sweet. And we were like, let's try and bring her on the podcast. So, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, this is fun. Like you guys have such a fun thing going. I hope traction with it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It means a lot that you could join us. And we just absolutely loved Rabbit Hole. It was such a crazy book. So, for those of you who haven't read it, it is about Teddy. She is a young teacher, and on the 10-year anniversary of her sister who has gone missing, her dad ends up committing suicide. And through Reddit, her case becomes prevalent again and she uncovers all these secrets. There are so many rabbit holes. And I just keep describing this book as wacky because it is so wacky and there are so many rabbit holes. But Hallie Bell and we just absolutely loved it.
Thank you.
We absolutely did. I mean, it's going to really be hard to top this as one of my favorite books. And I'm not even just saying that because you're on the podcast, but this is the book to watch this year. You've had some major shout outs from Jeanette McCurdy, Mary Claire Magazine. And I just honestly just couldn't be more proud of you. I think that it's just for your first debut novel. I mean, did you see this coming?
No, I mean my publisher is really indie too. I'm with Soho Press, and they're pretty small. So I think during the publication, like pre-pub process, everyone was really trying to manage my expectations, and they were like, not going to be huge. Like we're all going to do our best, and that felt fine. That was like that made sense to me. Um, it is funny though when people say like, "Oh, it's everywhere." It's kind of hard for me to tell because like I'm like, "Are you sure you're not just seeing my posts?" Because like I see all my posts. But no, it's nice to hear that like other people are actually finding the book. And it is such a strange book that I just am constantly like, I hope it finds its readers because I know there's people who like this book is not for everybody. Um, and it has definitely found some people who are like not interested in this like deeply weird, sad book. But I have talked to a lot of readers who it really resonated with them for one reason or another, and that has been really
I think that, and I made this comment on our last podcast that talking about the book that I think some thriller readers were just like mad that they were wrong about the ending.
Yes,
And
that's
I
exactly
think
what happened.
I really think that that is like what is like people were expecting like their Dateline episodes like these juicy, how you had commented before, like these juicy endings. And I mean, not that it wasn't a juicy ending, but it was real, I felt like. And I feel like some people just didn't get it.
No, not at all.
yeah. It's I guess it's been surprising to me like um I'm trying not to like read everyone's reactions to the book, but the reactions are surprising, like positive and negative. People will say I'm surprised of
Yeah.
how much fondness some people feel for Bill. I didn't see that coming. Um, I was kind of
Don't
like,
get
oh
me
yeah,
started.
especially because like in early drafts he was really really difficult, unlikable character. And then some people have been like, it's a love story. I'm like, oh okay, if that's what you think. Uh, but
But
yeah,
like
so
Teddy
people have different readings.
Yeah.
Teddy isn't perfect. So I don't understand people's gripe with that either because Teddy's not perfect. So why does Bill need to be perfect?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he's not a knight in shining armor.
Right. He fucking
We
dies
had
like it's
so
the
many
end.
thoughts on Bill.
So many thoughts. But also I feel like a man reading this book would definitely be like, Bill's my number one dude because he is just such a dude.
Such a guy's guy.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple. I mean, my poor husband's like being tortured because of all the sex scenes in this book, and his like group thread has been the guys that he went to high school with are reading the book, and they've been just like harassing him about it. They're like, this must be based on you. And it's like all the scenes where Bill is just being terrible in bed. So
You're like you're like, I'm a better writer than that. Okay. I'm
yeah,
creative.
I wouldn't have married that guy.
That is hysterical.
Totally. Oh my goodness.
Well,
Well, I want to trace back because you were so generous and you
yes.
gave us a signed copy of your book to give away to one of our listeners. And I just want to preface the episode with that because we're going to announce at the end. We're going to pick a name and announce it at the end.
Fun.
Yay, we're
Awesome.
so excited. That was so nice of you to give. And we've had a lot of people respond and they're like, oh, we're adding this to our TBRs. And then as soon as we said we were going to give it away, I had so many friends be like, oh my gosh, I hope I win. I hope I win. So, and I told Hallie Bell, since
Exciting.
she has it, I was like, I want it. I'm going to take it and I want it at my house.
Specifically, my mom and my mother-in-law, they're like entering to win. I'm like, listen, you guys are not going to get picked.
Well, let's get into some more specific author related questions. So, Hallie Bell, why don't you kick it over and start us off?
Okay, I have so many questions. I did a lot of research on you, not to be creepy, but I watched some of your interviews. So I do know kind of a general basis of how you kind of got your start. But I want our listeners to hear the story as well and your process because it's non-traditional. You don't follow the traditional writing process. You have your own and would love to hear more about it.
Sure. So, I guess I started writing seriously when I was in college. Um, and then got an MFA. So I'm definitely coming from that literary world. Most of the books I read are literary fiction too. So I think that also affects process and like the way I write. I'm not like a really outliney person. I think because I kind of ended up in this thriller space backward. Um, so yeah, when I finished my MFA, I wrote a book that was like this really long family epic kind of, and I couldn't find an agent for it. It was just like there wasn't enough plot. That was kind of general feedback, and it had a lot of the same themes, like grief and sisterhood and growing up. And so then I was like, you know what? I love like thrillers and mysteries, and always have, and that was my jam as a kid, especially. Um, so I was like, that's if I'm looking for like a plot container for these ideas, that's where I'm going to go. Like that makes sense. And I think just if you're talking about grief, you're talking about death and he's not there. And so like that missing persons element and like mark suicide, that all kind of tied in nicely. And then, yeah, the writing of it, though, I had no idea where I was going with it. And then I think by probably like halfway through, I figured it out. But then it was really a lot of because the first draft that my agent and I submitted to my British editor, because she came on first, um, it was even. This is like some people are like, this book has no plot. This book just like wanders, and they would be shocked by the first version because the first version was like even less of a thriller.
Hallie Bell and I would have loved to read the first version.
Oh my gosh, yes. We love a rabbit hole.
Yeah, so that was kind of how we got here.
Well, I absolutely love that. And I loved hearing about your relationship with kind of Dateline, with Reddit, with murder mystery, real life, like these following these things, because I have a very similar relationship with it where I was really into it and then kind of got just the ick from it. Like I was like, why are we watching? And I always, me and my best friend Ellie, we always joke like the pictures they show on Dateline are just not the photos that you want to see. Like they are just the same three photos flashing, like the
Yeah.
girl with the dog, and then and we have like this folder on our phone that's like our Dateline photos. If we're ever on Dateline, these are the photos that
Smart.
we want to use because they need more selection, because it's always the same three photos. But I just loved how you talked about it because it really is just growing into like, okay, we're helping families. okay, now we're just like not even helping the families because this is years and years later, and we're not helping find this missing person. And it just kind of starts giving you the ick, like they're just turning these people into celebrities or just entertainment, and it's just not.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I always sound more like moralizing than I mean to when I talk about this because I get the entertainment part of it. Like I think it's human nature to be interested in mystery. So like if there's some kind of mystery, your brain's trying to solve it. I think it's human nature even to be interested in like stories of suffering. Um, but yeah, the true crime like machine, the kind of like media machine of it has gotten so huge. And I think even the meta narrative around it, like all the meta narrative that's like we women are, mostly through crime, and that's because they're worried about being murdered or attacked. And like I buy that, I guess. That makes sense to me. But I also think there is part of it that is just rubbernecking. There's part of it and like I feel that in myself when I'm watching it. So it's not that I'm like, oh, we should, banish people through crime, but I do feel like a little bit of honesty about it. Like there is something just titillating about it, and that is appealing to like maybe the darkest parts of your brain. The one of the like strange feedback things on the book that's been so surprising to me is some people have such a like visceral negative reaction to on with Wolfie the dog in the book, which totally makes sense. But I've heard some readers be like, I'm a very sensitive type of person. I'm a highly empathetic. Like I can't stand any kind of violence like this. And then I'm like, but I'm pretty sure you thought a girl was going to be murdered in this book. Like you were kind of foaming at the mouth for that. And I don't know if
Oh
that's
my
tied
gosh,
to like the
mic
way we
drop.
said it. What?
I said mic drop. That is like that is so on point. Like people are like reading this about murder and then they get so turned off about the dog.
Yeah, which is just, I mean, I get it. Like dogs they're innocent, but they're just like perfect innocence, like children. But yeah, it has. I don't. Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know if that's like a way that we like fetishize and sort of estrange ourselves from specifically like female victims of crime, that they become these not real people. Like they're just sort of characters and they're like paper dolls that
Well, and I definitely think that you did honestly an honorable thing by creating a story. Like you were into this element of it, of the mystery, and then so you just created your own that's not real, you know what I mean, that you can indulge in because it's not about real people and it's not about real families. And you did a very honorable thing by like leaning into that outlet, and I think that's awesome. I think you do have a moral compass there, like about it. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say,
I
you
hear you,
actually,
Hallie Bell.
do
I
you hear
understand.
me?
Yeah. No, I get it. I mean, I feel that way kind of about fiction in general. Like I had to write a lot of
Yeah.
essays for the lead up to the book. There's this like weird thing with publishing where you have a novel coming out and they want you to write a bunch of essays. So I wrote some essays about like my mom and my half brother and even that stuff. I mean, credit to essayists because it's hard, but also it just I couldn't really justify it. Like I was like, this is there is something really unethical about it. Like I'm having the last word. I don't know. It just made me feel like God. I hope my kids never grow up to be writers. But I just think there's something really,
That's hysterical.
something powerful about storytelling that you gotta just embrace the what you're doing. Like if you're telling a story about some horrible thing that happened to someone, you're kind of Joan Didion has not in this context, but she talks about writing as like being a kind of violent thing because you're sort of forcing this story on someone, and there is a way in which it's like the minute you a documentary about some girl or whatever, that's all she is that version in the documentary. That will eclipse everything else because it's out there.
Well, and I want to, okay, I'm not even following my outline right now because I'm just like, oh my gosh, I have something to say. I want to know because I did pull the discussion questions from the Soho Press website when we were doing our last episode, and they talked about the symbolism of the gun. And when I was interpreting it, I was like, she is finally taking control of her narrative, and like the gun was like a symbolism of taking control. Am I right with that? Is that what you were going for?
We just need to know if our thoughts are even slightly right.
I'll just give you a grade, a letter grade.
I'm
I
like,
think
I see.
so. I think yeah, that makes sense to me. The gun, I think I'm sort of fascinated by guns because I have so little contact with them. Like I just am. I did not grow up around any guns. My grandfather was an FBI agent, but he was like pretty vehemently anti-gun. And then my dad ended up like being really, and I never met him. He died pretty young, but my parents were both like very against guns. But I think they're interesting like fictionally because it is sort of like the death drive manifest to me. Like it is just this physical. There's just so much potential. I think that's why Chekhov's gun is still a thing that people talk about all the time, right? The idea that if you introduce a gun in Act One, it has to go off in Act Three because it's just pure potential violence. So to introduce that kind of force into the narrative when Teddy is somebody who's been so passive, yeah, in some ways that's her, it will be her taking some kind of action. It's not a passive kind of tool. So whether she uses that, I think the minute the gun is introduced too, like via Chekhov's gun rules, you're like, okay, this is gonna go off, and who's gonna be the collateral here? And ultimately, the way she uses it, gruesome and like messed up. And I think also in a weird way, kind of this perverse act of love. So I have a lot of like mixed feelings about the way that the gun works in the book.
Because we were like, Teddy, you spend so much money at the vet. Take the dog to the vet. But think I think that she like I think it shows like she's just losing her mind. Like she's just not thinking clearly at this
Yeah,
point in the book. Am I
yeah.
right?
And the vet, I think, is that the kid is Jamie's mom, right? It's like early on, the vet's like, "Oh, Jamie said he loves your class," and that ends up being the kid who defaces her car. So, and then she gets kicked out of school and whatever. So, yeah, I think in my mind there are like a lot of reasons why, in that moment, she's just like, enough. Like we're just gonna end this here. But I think that also is a shift for Teddy, right? Who has just years her dad was falling apart, has never really talked to her family about anything with Anna, never really made any moves towards like living life. For her to just start making decisions, terrible decisions, but like some kind of decisions, it feels like character shift.
Oh my gosh. I could just talk to you about every element of this book all day long because
Halliwell's gonna keep you here until midnight.
I know I have little babies too, so I'm trying to be sensitive of your time because I understand that you have things to do, but that is just so fascinating to me. Okay, I'm gonna bring it back to the author question. So sorry for just jumping right into the rabbit hole.
Or the rabbit hole.
I'm sorry, you probably are so tired of rabbit hole jokes.
Oh no, it's fine.
Okay.
I just feel like I'm making sense because I'm like, when you talk about something so much that you're like, am I saying words anymore?
No,
No,
you
that
are, and we're just like amazed. We're just like,
I'm
oh, it makes
amazed.
sense.
And I'm just especially about the gun element. That just helped clear that up for me just because I took it as my interpretation of the reader, but it's so amazing to get to hear your actual intentions as the author and just see if I was even on the right track.
Well, no, I think also like I don't know. I went to a reading last night with this author, uh, Aub, who wrote River East, River West, and she was so insightful about her own book and like just had so many smart things to say. But I think if I'm being honest too, like and when I'm in the writing process, I'm like, yeah, she's gonna get a gun. That would be sick, like, and we're gonna do weird stuff with the gun. I don't necessarily
Yeah.
always have like a clear vision. And then someone will say like, oh yeah, and like thematically, whatever. Not that it's not there. I'm sure it's there on some kind of level, but I'm a year and a half out from writing this book now, so I have time to like make it sound like I knew what I was doing when, but it's all kind of groping around in the dark.
I love that. I feel like you saying that is going to make writing so obtainable to so many people. Like, it's all about imagination and creativity and using elements that you're interested in or you're fearful of or you don't know much about but you want to know more about. Like, I think that that is so inspiring. Like, you just made writing so obtainable for people in that
Yeah,
sentence.
it's just storytelling.
That's amazing. Okay, back to my author question. Okay, what is your ideal writing setup? So, like, where are you? What are you eating? What are you drinking? What's your, like, I'm ready to go?
So, I mean, it's not glamorous like my current.
We
I
idealize
don't.
things way too much.
I'm like, she's
I
on the
wasn't.
beach, margarita.
Yeah, that sounds good. um, but I do like a retreat a couple times a year now. That's a fairly
Ooh.
new thing for me. But there's a artist colony outside of LA called Doorland, um, and I go there, and you get this little cabin, and it's in Isla, which is this like beautiful area outside San Diego. And that is kind of like ideal. It's also I've gone in the winter and it's really cold. So we're seeing like wood burning stove in the cabin, so you're like making
Oh
your
my
own little
gosh.
fire. You
This
feel kind of
sounds
like a radio
glamorous.
person.
Where do we get an
This is
invite?
glamorous.
Can we come?
Silence in the woods. Perfect.
It's perfect. And like literally, I eat like an animal. Like I just eat peanut
Yes.
butter, straight peanut butter for like a week. So quiet. That is kind of ideal. Most of the time, I'm just scraping by here. I don't have like a designated writing space. I have two ways. I tried to make them share a room so I could have an office, and it just didn't work. The big one was like, he's trying to talk to me all night. I cannot sleep. You have to get this and talk. He's like one, so he's just blah blah,
Yes.
like he's not really talking. Um, but yeah, it didn't work. So one day I hope to have an office. Right now I mostly just write in like a recorder, my
We have the
laptop.
same plight, Kate, because I'm trying to get my kids into the same. I would like an
Yeah.
extra bedroom. My husband has the garage. He has two garages. And I have the laundry room. Like that's that's where my
It's
space
terrible.
is. Like we need our space. We need an office.
Yeah.
Let's get these kids into bunk beds.
That's my dream, bunk bed. I'm like, as
Same.
soon as you guys seem like you won't kill yourself, I'm gonna put you in bunk.
100%. Let me know when you do it because I'll do it.
Okay.
This is amazing.
Awesome. Well, do you want to ask our book questions?
Yeah, so
Okay.
more rabbit hole specific questions. Obviously, there were a lot of different ways that this book could have gone, and we talked about all the different like possible endings that Teddy wrote for her sister. And like, did you have a favorite one? I think I had a favorite one. We talked about the one that we think was Teddy's favorite, but what made you want to write like those different endings? And then did you have a favorite one?
Yeah. So I think every another I guess thing that I've been surprised by is that people find the ending so ambiguous. I don't actually find it that ambiguous. I think given like what Nikki tells Eddie, she doesn't know everything, but like she can kind of get to the point where she's like gone, probably.
Yeah.
But the probably, and I think she can be like 90% sure. But I think the thing that was interesting to me is that not knowing is going to haunt her, right? Because if she just found like a body, or if she found Angie or whatever, um, she would have no choice but to like walk away, right? Like if
Mm-hmm.
she's just fully dead. But the thing that seems so horrible to me about the not knowing is that he will have to kind of like choose to leave her behind at some point. He'll
Yeah.
have to choose to let her go. Um, and that really hard. That seems very difficult. Like it would be. And so I think she gets to a place where it's like, I'm inclined to take Mickey's account pretty seriously. That like
I think so
something
too.
sad What?
You made Mickey. I think a lot of people forget that because she's such a chaotic character, but you made her actually very trustworthy. Like she doesn't use Teddy's credit card, and she could because she sends her the picture. And she's in her apartment alone and doesn't do anything too shady in there. And I think it's so hard to see that, but she's actually pretty trustworthy. And so I think like you said, we can take her word, on what she saw and like 90%.
Yeah, it's not the kind of like neat and tidy account that Teddy would like. I think that's where the like alternate endings in. Like, what do you do with
Yeah.
that 10%? Do you go to the darkest possible imagine,
Mhm.
or try to cling to some hope, which is almost more painful, right? The version where Angie is just like somewhere else.
Yeah.
They'll just never see each other again. So, I mean, I would imagine that's Teddy's favorite version. That
Hmm.
there's some verse where her sister's out there, but yeah, I don't know. That seems exceedingly unlikely.
Did you know the ending, like how you wanted it to go the whole time, or did you like surprise yourself at any point?
I knew I wanted to write against true crime tropes, so I knew
Yeah.
it wasn't going to be like um super tidy. I think in general my like disposition is a little bit contrary in like almost like an adolescent way. I'm like trying to work through that a little bit. Like if I feel that the reader wants something too much, I will not give it to them. And I don't really know what that is.
She has
What that
stick it to
impulse
the
is.
man neosis from School of Rock.
Yeah,
I
that's
have
it.
that too.
So yeah, and I also just felt like if it was going to be about um I think the more interesting stories to me are the ones that like don't make Dateline because they can't be told in an hour. And if you look at like statistics, most people who go missing, aren't found within like, the first couple of days. Like a lot of people go missing and are immediately found. But most people who go missing and stay missing just don't find out what happened to them. Like that is just 10 years later, the odds that Teddy would solve this, that is a sort of fiction in and of itself. And I think the book actually like kind of shows its hand up front. Like Mark has been at this for 10 years and as a result he's killed himself. Like this is not a
Hmm.
fruitful avenue for Teddy to go down. Um and so yeah, I think with the ending I knew it was going to be more about with her life. Um and I knew there wasn't going to be something that would feel like Law and Order to me, where it's like, and then we uncovered uh, whatever. There's like a totem or like their bodies in the backyard or whatever. And I also knew there wasn't going to be like a lot of in a big reunion, so
Hmm.
sort of limited my options. The alternate endings, I had to kind of fight to keep that. That was one thing that
It was my favorite part.
it was the one. It was. I'm like, if you want to cut it, we'll cut it. I don't really care. I'm not precious about it. But that was the one scene I really fought to keep.
Good. Thank you.
I I loved it, and I think it's so amazing because I was going. My head was Mickey is Angie's baby.
Yeah.
That was like
That's
my whole
wild.
thing the whole time. I was like, that's what's gonna happen, and that's where like that logic of like this you can go down so many rabbit holes in this book, but at the end of the day, the story is about Teddy, and I keep having to remind myself of that like throughout the book, and I feel like Teddy has to keep reminding herself of that too. It's like this is my story, this is my future, how is it going to shake out for me? And she can be distracted by Mickey and Bill and and her mom, just all of
Ugh.
these other really distracting characters. And you're like, Daddy, it's about you, you know?
And I think that that is the reason why a lot of people on Goodreads, that's like the only place I read reviews, but a lot of people on Goodreads aren't realizing that. Like, it's not clicking with them that it's Teddy's story. Like, they want justice for everybody else, I think. And that's why some people on Goodreads are upset about the ending because, like you said, Annabelle, it's not what they wanted because they're not realizing that it's Teddy's story. But I don't know, just my 2 cents.
Yeah. I agree with you. I mean, I think I mean, I don't not get it. Like, I watch these things and I'm frustrated like anybody else if there's not like a clear resolution. But yeah, it was never about that, I think. Just
Yeah.
no left behind. I was just watching rewatching Zodiac like 3 days ago. And that movie too, I was like, wow, I haven't watched it in a long time. And obviously going into it, like, this is a real story. They never caught the Zodiac killer. The whole time you're like, but maybe I'm gonna catch him watching this movie, which is like,
Yeah,
what? And you're
totally.
like seduced into it. And then at the end
That
you're like,
is so true.
he got
I do
away.
that in movies all the time where I'm just like, this time it won't happen. Because
Yeah.
I love a movie of all rise. Because I'm just like that type of person. I'm like, I don't
She
want to
really
go
is.
through the valley. Like, just take me on up the hill.
Well,
So I get that feeling all the time where I'm like, okay, this time it's not gonna happen because my brain is gonna will it not.
Yeah.
and I don't know, Halle Bell, maybe I'm wrong. I think I read more thrillers than you do. And so we had very,
Yes.
very different like perspectives reading this book. And where she wants all up, I was like loving that I had no clue what was coming because I genuinely think that I am like a god when it comes to thrillers. And I'm like, oh, I can predict everything. And I didn't even like her being her baby. I was like, what? That's not right, Halle Bell. And then I was like, it could have been though. Like it was just like such a fun thriller for me because we didn't know where it was going ever.
And even the rock bottom for Teddy, I I have to give you such applause for that because it's that scene where she's with her mom and she's having that breakdown with her mom and just kind of unraveling in front of her, and then it's like the next chapter she's like sleeping with Steven from work. Ew. And you're like,
Ah,
oh no, this is rock bottom. Like, I thought it was with her mom crying, but no, it's with
it just kept
Steven from
going
work.
down.
Yeah. Well, I think also the book, I mean, this doesn't come up, but I do think it is sort of like an addiction. Like, not necessarily like obviously with like Angie and Mark, like literally with drugs and stuff. But with Teddy, there's a lot of like maladaptive behavior. I think they just feel that like she's not gonna have mom and a big hug and then it's over. Like, um, similarly, I guess I'm surprised when people the very end of the book as like, and now she's gonna go off and play house with Bill. Like, I'm not that's gonna happen. I think I hope I don't obviously that's where the book ends, but like I hope that Teddy pulls out of it. I don't think it'll be a totally upward climb. Like I think it'll be a lot of flips and um back to
and
things.
and that was one of the
Yeah.
questions too, was at the end it was like, do you think Teddy will actually ever move? And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yes,
Yep.
I believe in Teddy. I believe in her, and I think that she'll pull it together. I mean, yeah, I like you said, it's like not going to be perfect, like the sunset ending. Like, I'm sure she'll have some, but I think built her so resilient that how could she not keep going? You know.
Yeah. Yeah. While we're talking about characters, so we kind of talked about Teddy. Well, we talked about Teddy a lot. We kind of talked about Mickey, not as much as I would have liked because Mickey was so much for me, but I thought that you just like developed and wrote these characters so beautifully. And like Halle Bell said earlier, like we wanted to not trust Mickey. Like I at one point was like, why is she giving her her credit card number? But then we liked Mickey. We trusted Mickey. And then there's Bill and the mom, and everyone has their problems. And so we just wanted to ask, like, was there any character that like you had the most fun developing, or like any character that surprised you at how it turned out for them?
The most fun was probably Claire. I really liked writing Claire.
Ooh,
That's shocking.
that is
I
shocking.
I started when
I
I
love
started
that.
this, I was like, oh, this is gonna be a really because I usually write these like horrible novels, like just brutal. And I was like, Claire and Teddy are actually gonna have a good relationship. That's gonna be different for me, and that's gonna be a writing challenge. And then because like I am who I am, every draft Claire got a little pricklier and their relationship complex. And my husband kept being like, remember when you said, because he reads everything, he's like, remember when you said that this was going to be like a sweet relationship that was like a part of the novel. But yeah, I think I had fun with Claire. She kind of I did a lot of like background. I had a good sense of and her dialogue was really fun to write because she just
Oh, it was
kind of like
so good.
So good.
It was
and
her
passive
lines
aggressive.
when Chetty's driving and she goes, "We don't want another accident." I just literally died. I laughed so hard because I was just like, "Why would you say that?" I was like, "You are practically a Reddit subscriber." Like she is totally trolling Teddy sometimes.
Yeah, she knows she is and is I think simultaneously like the most resilient character in the book, right? Like this is sort of a blip for her because she's through so much shit in her life and she's like a helpless baby. It has this like frustrating, like how humiliating that I should have to get a dog and not together. Like this is I can't with you. And there's something kind of manipulative about her. So she was fun to write. Mickey, I think, was a challenge only because her she's so filtered through Teddy's lens that like when she appears, because Teddy's view of her is so blurry, she's like this manic pixie girl, and then as like Teddy gets closer to her and starts to understand her more and more, it's like, oh, she's actually not like this fearless, super cool, untouchable girl. She's kind of like a weirdo, and she's a kid, and she's really troubled, and like, why is she here? And
Yeah.
And
that
do
was
you think they really look like each other? That was a topic of conversation for us. It's like, is
I
it
don't think
Teddy
they
just
do at
being
all.
nuts, or does Angie really look like Mickey and vice versa?
I really wanted to have like a doppelganger in the book.
Oh.
And so I love like I was teaching a lot of Gothic literature at the time. I loved that idea of doppelgangers. And I think Nabokov has this book where he does this thing where the main character finds a guy who he's like, you look just like me. We're gonna pull off this perfect crime, like because you look like me and whatever. And then at the end, it turns out the guy looks nothing like him. But like you're with the narrator
I
the whole
love that.
time, so it's not until the end that you realize this was completely a false double. And so that was kind of interesting to me. I think the scene I wrote in because you don't hear any of the other characters really commenting on how Nikki looks like
No.
Angie, and then you hear Bill actually be like, "What are you
Yes.
talking about?"
That's my
This was
favorite
Michelle's
line in
line.
the whole book when Bill says, "Well, why don't I just dye my hair black and we can all be sisters?" I was cackling. I thought that was the funniest thing I've ever read.
Yeah, because he's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. He's like, "Calm down. It's okay. You don't she's not your sister. She doesn't look like your sister. You're freaking out. Take a
Yeah.
step back."
I was gonna say, I just the dialogue. I last time I said that, so I go take a shot every time I say dialogue because the dialogue is just so good. And I just want to and I just want to tell you that literally I was laughing so hard in bed when the principal comes in and her dad's just died, and she's like, this must be so hard for you because I just feel like anyone who's lost, and you have that hug when people come to you after people die and you're just like, please don't touch me. Like,
Yeah.
and you can just feel it in every ounce. And you wrote that so relatable. I think everyone has had that moment, and I had to tell you that was my favorite part of the whole book.
And with a lot of scenes in this book, they're just so real and so relatable. And it's not the typical cozy thriller you get. Like you are getting real trauma and real grief. And it was perfect. Like the writing was amazing. We loved it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so the funny stuff that happens when like kind of sad. I think that's also like my sisters and I find that so funny, like making people kind of uncomfortable. And there's this like certain social script around grief, and if you don't follow it, even if you're like ostensibly the should get to kind of set the pace because you're the grieving party, it makes other people so uncomfortable. So like there are all the it's almost like a novel of manners in that way, just because there's so many things about the way that
We have that in the South so much. We're always like, bless your heart. I cannot believe. Like, and it's just like, it's so much. And
They
you
don't
just
want to
know
hear
people are
that.
being, we just don't. Nobody wants to hear, are you all right? Like, it's
Yeah.
just the last thing ever. And I just want to, I don't know if you'd be open to this, but we just have a funny plot hole that we wanted to touch on
I don't
about
know.
Bill's band.
It's not funny, Halle Bell. It's real. It's real because it
It's
upset me.
real. What happened to Bill's band? Did he ever,
Why
we never hear him going to
why was he in a
practice,
band?
getting a beer with bandmates. Is it because Teddy's so involved with herself? That's what I was thinking about today. I'm like, this must be what she's trying to get across. Because what happens to Bill's band?
yeah, I do think that that is part of it. Like we don't see Bill for like good chunks of time, and I think there's one scene where like Teddy leaves Bill, and he's kind of like in her mind he's being sort of pathetic and sad, and then she comes back like days or weeks later, and she expects to find him like still being sort of pathetic and sad,
Sitting
and
at
he's
the
like
table.
doing yogurt. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like,
Really?
oh,
Really he's just been at band practice?
yeah,
Yeah, he's got an album coming out, Teddy.
yeah. So I
Oh
don't.
my
I
gosh.
mean, what? Who knows what Bill gets up to? He's busy, and not that Teddy's asking.
That not that she's asking or checking in or just seeing how the bandmates are doing.
She doesn't care.
Never.
She's not going to the gigs.
I found
And
out after the fact that a friend of mine is actually in a Dave Matthews Band cover band. Like after the
stop.
book came out,
Of
and I was
course.
like, "Listen,
I
it's not about
didn't do
you."
it about you.
You
That's
weren't my
hilarious.
inspiration.
Calm down. You don't get any credit. Well, should we
Well,
do the giveaway?
let's do the giveaway. This has been so much fun. And thank you again for coming on and chatting with us and giving us a copy of this book. And it has just been such a pleasure to read it and talk about it. And yeah, so thank you for coming on here. Let's do the giveaway.
Okay. I pre-drew.
Oh my gosh, she would.
I pre-drew. Okay. Jenna Wheeler, which is so funny because
No,
it's
she
my
didn't.
sister-in-law. Yes.
No, but Jenna will love this book.
But Jenna will love this book. My sister-in-law will love this book. So, Jenna, you get your copy, signed copy of The Rabbit Hole. Congratulations. I did not pick you.
And she's gonna
Thanks.
freak out because she was grinding to win this book.
She
Like
was
she was commenting.
grinding.
She really wanted to win. So I'm happy for you,
I'm happy
Jenna.
for Thank you so much, Kate. I really appreciate this. Thank you for answering questions. Thanks for going down our rabbit holes. We just
We had
appreciate
too
you so
many.
much.
Thank you. This was really fun, and yeah, I hope to talk to you guys soon. I'll be listening to the podcast.
Aw,
Awesome.
thank
And
you.
when that next book come out, you know where you can have a good time on the cover to
Or
cover girls.
or if you
We'll
need any
point out your plot
inspiration.
holes.
Yeah, it's going to be about podcast.
Ooh.
It's gonna be about the
Teddy
cover
starts
to
a
cover.
podcast.
Oh, and that was another thing. My son's name is Teddy. And so as
Yes.
soon as my newborn baby, so as soon as I started reading this, I was like, Teddy, oh my gosh, I cannot believe.
I was like, we can't read it. I was like, this is gonna traumatize Halle Bell because the main character's name is Teddy, and her sweet little baby is the most perfect thing in the world. And I was like, oh no. I was like, she's gonna hate this book.
No, luckily I love Teddy so much, even though she's such a nutcase. I loved her so much, and I was like, kudos, Teddy. Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you.
Thanks for jumping on.